taking things back to the mayor's race, so you have the leftish candidates, none of whom are socialists, none of whom are committed to decommodifying housing. And then you have the YIMBY-ish.
I would push a little bit on that characterization.
Okay, go for it.
And I know that I'll get in trouble here with my fellow panelists.
You're uncommitted in the race, is that right?
I haven't made an endorsement as yet. I think that it's not fair to Morales' campaign to group her in with someone like Wiley. And in terms of, I think Sia's critique earlier about talking about, Vienna housing versus talking about something that's built off of what's already existing in New York City, I don't think takes away from Morales' messaging about, social housing as a human right, and really very similar language, if not the same language, from a lot of socialist frameworks that we've been putting as candidates. And I know that she has said that I don't think she identifies as a socialist, but a lot of her policies definitely look very similar.
Well, how do we know? I mean, and I don't say this because the skepticism is coming from anywhere because I haven't been following this that closely, but if we don't know a lot about her background and record and she's kind of new to the political scene altogether, how do we know that she's not engaging in the kind of sloganeering that we've seen from a lot of moderates right now, including people like Joe Biden, who is singing from the rooftops that healthcare is a human right as he pivots to a conversation about how much your premiums are going to be under his plan?
Well, I would say that, and I think that's a very good instinct to ask how much of the rhetoric is real. I think with her, what gives me confidence in her rhetoric is the fact that in the different examples along this race, there's been a difference in the way in which she responds to events. So I think about Cuomo especially. I think that Morales was the first to call for the impeachment of Cuomo of any of the mayoral candidates. And that kind of speaks to relationship to power, which is something that for me has become, when I'm in Albany, there are so many people who espouse progressive policies, but when it comes to challenging leadership in order to have those policies be heard on the floor, are unwilling to do so. And they actually matter. I'm just
point in the jar, Bree.
I'm gonna just pass that over.
No, point taken. I have a lot of admiration for people who are willing to force adversarial moments in politics. Really says something about a person.
So I think that her response to Cuomo was something that I thought was very important in understanding. And the other thing I would say is that new to politics, I think, is a bit unfair because she might not have been a public persona vis-a-vis these fights, IDC, Zephyr, Nixon, all of these other races. But I think that she is somebody that has come from a world of kind of social services in this city. So,
but are we calling?
It's hard.
I'm less kind. I would be less kind than
I know you are. I know you are.
No, I agree with you. She's the most left in the race. I think the service angle, though, I don't know. I'm just reflexively. I don't know. I'm more reflexively skeptical of nonprofits. I think not all of them. I think some of them are great. I do think in an ideal world, the city government would be performing services directly and not farming out so much to kind of these nonprofits that really. A lot of them really just pad executive salaries and don't pay their workers very much. I've looked at, Phipps, for example, several extremely high compensated executives, her included. So I don't doubt her convictions at all. And I agree with you. She was standing up to Cuomo. That's super important. Scott Stringer never stood up to Cuomo, ever supported him in 2018. Maya Wiley, is working for de Blasio, not saying anything, right? So Morales definitely shines in that context. I do judge her a bit more harshly in terms of the lack of involvement, where she was doing fine for herself, and I'm sure the social services side of Phipps does good things. I asked her about it; she was kind of vague. I still don't have a great handle on what the social services side does. I do understand what the real estate development side does, and she was questioned recently on did she wish she could hold Phipps more accountable, and her answer was a little defensive, what was I supposed to do, issue press release? And I think she's the best the left has in this race. She's not a Zohran Mamdani. I'd be more excited if Zohran was there.
So what's your take on Morales? And also, I just want to point out, our audience does not know what the hell Phipps is.
No.
So I can say what Phipps says. So
Please.
Phipps Houses is one of I'm like to give a history lesson. Initially,
Please.
what was happening was unions were building housing for their workers. Nelson Rockefeller was like, we need to get more private developers to be building the housing, made all these changes, and Phipps Houses was one of the first big private developers. They're also a not-for-profit that started building a lot of low-income and middle-income housing in New York City. They're like a big like anti-poverty organization. They very much are like, there's lots of different types of nonprofits. There's like nonprofits that do like community organizing, and there's nonprofits that do legal like eviction defense, and there's, you know, they're like an anti-poverty social services organization, and they provide a lot of housing. They are notoriously anti-union. So in addition to not really being great for their tenants and evicting a lot of their tenants, they also are on the wrong side of every single union in the city, both the building trades, 32BJ, and even there's been a push, they're a huge employer, right? There's been a push to unionize not-for-profit employees. And they've also been on the other side of that work. And so whatever, they're an actor who is like thrived under the choice to export a lot of the welfare state from the state itself to the not-for-profit community. So that's what Phipps is. As to Dianne and her like leftist credentials, I don't, I guess, actually know if it matters whether she believes these things or if she's just saying them. I think that the politicians are going to be reflective of the power that the movement has built to a large degree. And then, of course, the politicians who are our friends, like Zohran. And then there's going to be, you know, the politicians who, like, look, Dianne, like, saw this as her lane to run. And she is running. Should she become mayor? You know, I think that the need to continue to organize a working class base that's going to be building that outside power to, like, see which way the wind is blowing for her would be, like, tremendously important. And I think, you know, Stringer woke up in like 2018, saw that like Julia was going to be elected to the state senate, like became a communist, and like that's fine. And Dianne being like, oh, there's a growing left movement in New York, and that's my lane that I'm going to run in. That's fine too. Like they're reflective of the tools of like how organized we are. The problem is that like we are not organized enough for Dianne to win. And I don't even know that she's like trying to win.
Wait, well, that was going to be my next question, because there's an extent to which when you're not doing well in the polls and you're arguably just not just, but like a kind of a more message candidate, performative candidate, that you can take bold stances like going up against Cuomo because you don't really have much to lose.